Conformément à l'ordre de renvoi du 26 novembre 2025, nous continuons notre
Pursuant to the order of reference of November 26, 2025, we're continuing our study of the proposed official languages administrative monetary penalties regulations. I would like to welcome our witnesses. As an individual, Éric Labelle, Weston Easton, Associate Professor, Faculty of Law, University of Moncton, by video conference. Did I pronounce your name correctly? It was pretty close. Okay, thank you. Please correct me if necessary. From the Canada Airports Council, James Bogusch, Chair of the Small Airports Caucus, Chris Phelan, Senior Vice President, Policy, Industry and Government Affairs, Julie Pendant, Senior Director of Communications, welcome. From the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority, Éric Fortier, General Manager, Corporate Affairs, Marc-André O'Rourke, Senior Legal Counsel, and from Marine Atlantic Inc., Patty Merrigan, Vice President, Human Resources. Welcome. Did I pronounce all your names correctly? Thank you. So each organization will have 5 minutes to deliver its opening statements, and then we'll move on to a Q&A from members. Mr. Weston Eastaugh, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify today on the proposed regulations. Since I only have 5 minutes, I'll go straight to the point. Overall, the draft regulations are a significant step forward in the implementation of the Official Languages Act. Having reviewed the previous meetings of the committee, I do note that there are some concerns that have been raised, including 3 that seem the most important to me. First of all, the possibility that the maximum amount of $50,000 may prove insufficient to achieve the desired objectives. The administrative burden of the system, which could slow down the process and undermine the effectiveness of the system, could leave it open to legal challenges, and the exclusion of certain entities that play an important role in the traveler's experience. Each of these concerns seems reasonable to me, but in my opinion, only the second and third would warrant that the committee consider immediate amendments to the regulations. The $50,000 ceiling may seem small when you look at the overall turnover of a company like Air Canada. However, in my opinion, the relevant point of comparison would be the activity in question, such as a flight. At first glance, it seems plausible that such an amount would be sufficient to bring about behavioral changes on the scale. Having said that, I do find it regrettable that the government does not appear to have conducted, or at least presented, a quantitative analysis in this regard to better support the reasonableness of the chosen limit. The administrative burden of the process is more concerning, particularly for the reasons raised by the Commissioner. In my opinion, it is not necessary to impose such detailed criteria for the minutes. Well-established principles of administrative law already allow for review based on the rationality of a measure, while recognizing that the requirements for justification may vary from one context and case to another. I do not believe that adding overly detailed criteria significantly enhances the transparency or fairness of the system. On the contrary, they risk unnecessarily burdening the work of the Office of the Commissioner and opening the door to challenges based on purely formal deficiencies. In my view, it would be preferable to adopt a more flexible framework and allow best practices to develop as cases are processed. Finally, the exclusion of the Canada Border Services Agency and the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority seems questionable to me, given the intensity of their interactions with the public and the fact that, according to the Commissioner's annual reports, these organizations have been the subject of a significant number of complaints over the years. We heard the objection that imposing a penalty on a publicly funded entity amounts to shifting funds from one pocket to another, and it was also mentioned that compliance agreements can sometimes be more effective for federal entities. However, while this may be true, they do not detract from the relevance of a monetary penalty. as indicated in Section 65(3) of the Act, the purpose of imposing a penalty is not to punish, but rather to promote compliance with Part 4. It is therefore a tool for changing behavior and the structure of incentives, not for making the entity pay for moral reasons. Despite their public funding, these organizations are subject to budgetary discipline, so a monetary penalty could influence their operational priorities. In this regard, it's worth noting that the federal government already uses cost recovery and allocation mechanisms for services it provides internally for a similar purpose. That concludes my remarks, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to give the floor to the Canadian Airports Council. Thank you. My name is Julie Pendant, and I'm the Director of Communications. I am here on behalf of the Council. A point of order. I can't hear. Is it possible to check if there's a technical issue?
Je vais suspendre une minute.
Proposed regulations to establish a system of administrative monetary penalties for violations of the Act. Canadian airports subject to the Official Languages Act are strongly committed to providing the highest levels of customer service, including services to travelers in both of Canada's official languages. In fact, several small airports recently wrote to the Minister of Transport to request assistance in achieving greater compliance with the Official Languages Act. Airports want to fully comply with their obligations under the Act. However, the penalty system proposed by the government will not help airports comply with these regulations. It will only financially penalize those who fail to meet certain requirements. The CAC submitted a brief during the pre-consultation phase of these regulations. Among our recommendations was a request that this regime apply only to airports with more than 4 million passengers per year. It is extremely difficult, if not impossible in some cases, to recruit qualified bilingual staff for service positions at commercial wages. In many small communities, and especially in the airport environment, the main competitor for bilingual talent is the federal government. The CAC also has serious concerns about the timing of the implementation of this regulation. The Council is currently involved in a case before the Supreme Court of Canada that will determine the requirements and entities covered by the Official Languages Act with respect to airports. Thus, although the regulations define the penalties to be imposed, the exact obligations of airports remain an active issue that has yet to be decided by the courts. To put this into context, 150 million passengers passed through Canadian airports in 2024, and only 77 complaints were filed nationwide. In a frontline service industry, it remains difficult to achieve perfect compliance at all times. Language rights are of fundamental importance, and airports fully share this commitment. Therefore, rather than punishing airports when certain situations do not fully meet the requirements, we would like to see the government take proactive measures to help airports achieve compliance with this act, including program RAM support, funding, and a greater clarity regarding specific expectations and obligations. I will now give the floor to Mr. James Bogus. You have about a minute and 45 seconds left.
My name is James Bogus. I am the President and CEO of the Regina Airport. I'm also the chair of the Small Airports Caucus for the CAC. I've worked in airports over 2 decades, and I have direct experience with both the Victoria Airport and the Regina Airport when it comes to obligations of official languages in airports and serving the traveling public. I want to put on record that up until 2018, our obligations for official languages for travelers that met a specific demand were very clear. The Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages actually posted these obligations on its very website, public for all to see. These included things like wayfinding signage, pre-printed restaurant menus, security notices, and a host of other items that were very specific to the traveler. However, in 2018 until now, it's my opinion that their office changed the very nature of these obligations dramatically, expanding the scope to touch almost every area of our airport's business, well beyond the essential need of the traveling public as intended. They're now validating a wide range of compliance issues, which is of great concern to us now that there's consideration for a regime of potential monetary penalties. This new regime has also enabled legal challenges from a few members of the public who are looking to monetize airports like Regina as if we're not complying with the regulations.
Mr. Bogus, I apologize. Your time is complete, so I just could ask you to wrap up,
Yes.
if possible.
We're asking you to consider amending this regulation to exempt airports under 4 million passengers. We want to avoid downloading more cost to the traveling public, and I want to assure this committee it is our commitment in Regina to sensibly and commercially ensure that we have both official languages served for the traveler. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Et j'aimerais maintenant passer la...
Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair and honorable members of the committee. My name is Éric Fortier, and I am Senior Manager of Corporate Affairs at the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority, often referred to as CATSA. I'm accompanied today by my colleague Marc-André O'Rourke, a Senior Legal Advisor. Thank you for inviting us to appear before your committee as part of your important review of the proposed regulations on administrative monetary penalties under the Official Languages Act.
So the Government of Canada's response to the events of September 11, 2001, and was formally established on April 1, 2002, to oversee and strengthen aviation security in Canada. L'organisation est une société d'État.
The organization is a Crown corporation funded by parliamentary appropriations, accountable to Parliament through the Minister of Transport and regulated by Transport Canada. Our mission is to protect travelers by providing the highest level of aviation security while ensuring a positive customer experience. Specifically, CATSA is responsible for providing security screening services at 89 designated Canadian airports. This mandate is carried out through 2 Canadian third-party service providers, which collectively employ approximately 9,000 screening officers nationwide. Our responsibilities include pre-boarding screening, checked baggage screening, non-passenger screening, and management of the Restricted Area Identification Card system. In 2024-25, CATSA screened nearly 70 million passengers alone. I would like to emphasize that CATSA takes its official languages obligations very seriously. We are committed to ensuring that passengers traveling through designated bilingual airports receive an active offer and are served in the official language of their choice.
Contractual arrangements with screening contractors and is supported by ongoing performance measurement related to active offer, service demand, and staffing levels. This is in addition to having specific procedures, action plans, training, and ongoing awareness initiatives. De plus, L'ACSTA.
In addition, CATSA works closely with the Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages. For example, we've taken the initiative to set up monthly meetings with representatives of the office to discuss certain complaints and possible solutions for improving service in both official languages. Improving the customer experience is a key pillar of CATSA's strategic plan and includes facilitating an inclusive screening experience for all passengers. In support of this objective, CATSA has deployed more than 170 bilingual facilitators at screening points in the 16 busiest airports to assist passengers who may have questions about the screening process or may require additional assistance. CATSA also regularly conducts passenger surveys on various service indicators, including service in the official language of their choice. In the third quarter of this fiscal year, 95.7% of respondents indicated that they were served in the official language of their choice. This shows that our measures are having a positive impact and strengthening service delivery to travelers. Thank you once again for allowing me to address you, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much, Mr. Fortier. And now I give the floor to Marine Atlantic. Patty Merrigan, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good day, bonjour, Mr. Chair and honorable members of the committee. On behalf of Marine Atlantic, thank you for the invitation to appear before you today and for the opportunity to comment on the draft regulations. Before starting, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that Marine Atlantic operates in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples, and on the island of Uktumguk, the unceded traditional territory of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq peoples. By way of brief context, Marine Atlantic is a Crown corporation that operates the federally mandated ferry service between the island of Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. This connection is constitutionally significant. It was entrenched in the terms of union when Newfoundland and Labrador joined Canada, and it remains a vital transportation link for passengers, commercial traffic, and communities. At the outset, I want to state clearly that Marine Atlantic recognizes the importance of the Official Languages Act, including the recent amendments intended to reinforce substantive equality between Canada's two official languages. We take compliance seriously, and we continue to make meaningful investments to strengthen official languages capacity across our organization. Our appearance before the committee today is not to diminish the importance of the Act or our official languages responsibilities. However, we question whether these administrative penalties will achieve the desired outcomes, specifically in more rural areas such as ours. There is a contradiction between the purpose of the draft regulations and their effect. Though the amendments to the Act suggest that the purpose of a penalty is to promote compliance and not to punish, a penalty is by definition a form of punishment. For administrative penalties to go beyond punishment and lead to compliance, the threat of the penalty must encourage change at an institution that is non-compliant. The logic is that priorities will shift if it is more cost-effective to be compliant, thereby leading the institution to invest the resources that allow it to comply with its obligations. However, that logic does not necessarily hold true in all circumstances, particularly for organizations like Marine Atlantic operating in areas with limited markets for bilingual talent. Even after the administrative penalties come into force, Marine Atlantic will struggle to recruit bilingual talent despite ongoing investment and effort, which creates risk. Similarly, we're concerned that penalties for Type A violations may inadvertently result in reduced services to the traveling public in some circumstances. Third-party businesses operating on our premises include small, sometimes family-run businesses such as food services and gift shops at our terminals. Marine Atlantic will likely be forced to eliminate such services if there is a risk of monetary penalties for noncompliance by those third parties. We also have concerns about how these penalties may affect organizations like Marine Atlantic, which are heavily subsidized by public funds. We are a public service and we do not operate on a profit-generating model. Any penalties imposed would ultimately reduce the funds that are otherwise directed toward delivering essential public service operations. Compliance in rural regions is not simply a matter of money. Imposing penalties to promote compliance incorrectly assumes that the issue is a lack of investment in official languages, a lack of desire to recruit or retain bilingual talent, or a lack of prioritization of official languages obligations. Marine Atlantic welcomes measures that will help increase our ability to offer services in both official languages and promote linguistic duality in Canada. However, we fail to understand how these penalties will achieve those objectives. With that in mind, we respectfully offer some recommendations for the committee's consideration if monetary penalties are imposed. First, we suggest exploring flexible approaches that allow small, independent businesses in rural regions additional time and support to adapt to the regulatory requirements. We would also recommend that there be no mandatory minimum penalty for Type C violations, allowing the Commissioner to determine whether monetary penalties are appropriate in the circumstances for any type of violation, ensuring the focus is on compliance and not punishment. Finally, we respectfully recommend that funds from monetary penalties be reinvested directly into the affected organization for dedicated official languages education and training, which would more effectively strengthen bilingual service capacity than a punitive payment. Once again, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak with the committee today. I would be pleased to respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Merrigan.
We will now move on to the question period with the members here. First of all, Mr. Godin, you have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses for being with us today, be it virtually or in person. I, for some years, have worked on the modernization of the Official Languages Act, and we've come up with some regulations. On June 2023, there was a royal assent, and we're still working on the recommendations to this day, and I'm somewhat disappointed because of that. I'm looking in my notes here, and I see that it is Mr. Weston Eastock. I see you spoke about the fact that perhaps there was no quantitative analysis concerning these regulations. Could I hear you speak to that matter, sir? Thank you so much, Mr. Godin. My comment had to do with the fact, and that comes back to Ms. Merrigan's rationale earlier, that monetary penalties reflect the internal structure of the entities. So if there is a certain idea of the structure of costs, the margin of profit, the profit margin rather, that would have to be determined if the penalty were to produce its desired effect, if it's being applied as it should. So to my mind, that's only logical that there should be a quantitative analysis applied to these matters to be able to come up with the correct amounts to be applied. Thank you so much, Mr. Eastock. I'm going now to move on to the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority. You're a Crown Corporation, and you receive parliamentary support. So the votes are in an Appropriation Act, but where do they come from? For each one, it goes into a pot for the government, and the percentage will be allotted. You're saying a percentage is financed by the government, the rest by traveling public, by the traveling public? No, not quite really. It's not a subsidy from the government, but there's one stakeholder too many here. The travelers, the government, and who else? This is very important. You're a Crown Corporation, and you get your funnies through funding rather through the Appropriations Act. So there is a difference. Thank you for shining some light on this. Mr. Godin, this it's very difficult to find my notes with 4 different witnesses. Mr. Bogoz, it was clear, you said, before 2010 it was easy to operate, but as of 2018 it got a little muddier. And all the regulations and the heavy administrative mechanism that was involved was applied. Can you please give us more information?
Through the chair, for the question to the member. I can tell you I've grown up in airports, And when I first started in airports, official languages, in my view, were not being implemented in a way that you would expect today. There's no doubt. And I'm glad to see that industry worked with the government to come up with a very clear and concise traveler-specific mandate that applied to airports for many years. For the committee's interest, I brought a copy so you can all see it. It's not on the public website any longer. It's been removed. But I've got it here, and I'm happy to share it with the committee. And it's very reasonable. It ensures travelers can receive essential services in the official language of their choice, as they can today at my airport in Regina, Saskatchewan, which, by the way, has a very low demographic of French-speaking compared to English as per the census. However, in 2018, that all changed, and that's the concern with compliance today.
Thank you, sir. I only have 6 minutes, so I do have to interrupt you. What I found interesting, Madame Pondant suggested something very important. You can't consider Regina Airport or Victoria Airport on the same basis of Toronto Airport. You are airports, but you don't have the same finances to operate with. Is it realistic, do you think, to attach the same importance to both official languages? Should there be a regulation that is not too clear, which might, in fact, lead to some sort of contestation? Well, we need to see how far we have to go in terms of regulations. Given the fact that my time is limited, can you send the clerk some recommendations in writing, very clear ones, with respect to exemptions for certain airports that have less than 4 million passengers or travelers per year, and that would nonetheless allow you to continue respect the promotion of official languages? Yes, I can do that, absolutely. Thank you, sir. Your time's up. I added a little bit. I always add a little bit more because of translation. Ms. Chanette, 6 minutes. Thank you to our witnesses who are with us today, because this is a very important subject. You have airports, but there's also the issue of the marine terminals as well, which is important. Now, with respect to airports, in terms of the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority, you spoke about 4 million. We, in the past, looked at what should be done for the future. And our Canadian reality is such that from the east to the west, we want to work with small and medium-sized businesses in the industry to have more francophones involved everywhere in Canada. And also, we have the wish that our provinces and our regions have the means at hand to hire more bilingual people to be able to promote both official languages, French or English, English or French. But we need this talent, bilingual talent. We need services in both official languages, not just for our Canadian business community, but really everywhere when we want to ensure foreign investments. So this limit that you speak to, 4 million, if I look at 2018 and now we're in 2026, and if you look forward to 2030, we are going to have a greater need for bilingualism. So I want to understand your thinking. What is the transition that you need What do you have to do to ensure that you will have the bilingual talent that you need?
Thank you for the question. Every region of Canada is different in terms of its demographics, as per the census. I'm representing our small airports, but I'm also representing my own airport in Regina. Based on census data in 2021, I would literally have to have 1/4 of the entire French-speaking census work at my airport for the entire population of my city to comply with what's expected of me today. We put sensible solutions in the airport to support bilingualism, specifically a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week phone line that my staff can use to translate if someone chooses to speak in French or English. The challenge I have is that's not acceptable in the eyes of the regulator. And this is the problem, not a lack of desire to comply or to promote, because I feel strongly, as I'm sure the committee does, this is a very important issue for us, especially as an airport in a capital city, and I take that very seriously.
J'aimerais entendre Madame Merrigan.
Ms. Merrigan, I'd like to hear what you think of this reality for your organization, the transition that you need to make, and the mechanisms that you will need to affect it.
We have similar issues with respect to bilingual talent in the area that we operate, particularly in small towns in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. It has been an ongoing issue for us, and I would say we have invested significant amount of effort and money into French training for our employees, into attempts to recruit. And we will continue to do that and try to grow our ability to provide better service in both official languages. However, we will continue to be at risk of complaints under the Official Languages Act simply because we have a limited talent pool of bilingual individuals in this area. So we continue to invest in education and training. We currently have employees in full-time French language training, for example, but it is an ongoing struggle that we don't see a solution for anytime in the near future.
This concern for bilingual personnel is one thing, but do you need more support in the regions to be able to put some money behind these programs to promote bilingualism? But let me now turn to Mr. Labelle, Weston Eastalt. Sir, you spoke about the criteria, the weight of the process, how slow it was. I want to hear you on this. What can we do to improve it, but taking into account at the same time that we don't want to hear excuses for not moving forward? You have 45 seconds only. Well, very, very quickly. Section 6C of the regulation, which gives you a very detailed list of what is in the minutes itself, and that looking at it would allow for the justification of the commissioners and certain things that could be eliminated. But I think that would really simplify matters. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Jeanette. Mr. Beaulieu, 6 minutes. Well, Mr. Labelle, Weston Eastalt, I think that you said that we have to be more flexible. We have to be able to broaden what we do that applies to restaurants and others, but not to security services. You're saying you want to see a broadening of the regulations. My comment, sir, is founded on this. At the basis, it is the same principles should apply to all facets of the traveling public's experience. And I recognize, though, that the points that have been brought up by the government with respect to that, and I recognize what the goal is. But nonetheless, it's only a part of the bigger picture when you receive complaints. So a penalty is not going to solve the problem. It is a tool that should be available for certain entities that if they cannot correct the problem. Well, I have some knowledge with respect to having problems with security at Dorval, some pretty big problems, and I think it's time to apply the regulation to them. Well, people from Air Canada said it should be applied at all levels, to all entities, federally, and even for the aviation companies. What do you think about this? Well, what was he saying? He was saying we follow these things very closely, but for our private competitors, it gives them an advantage. I think we should think seriously about it, long and hard. Okay? The weight of the process is complicated, as you alluded to. It would apply only when Part 2 of the regulation would apply. And so I don't think it'll be very long until it is applied. So have you started already to be able to apply this? Well, it could be, but I can't get into all the details at this level of implementation. But I do recognize that there are risks in moving too quickly with a new system. You're changing a system, you're putting in place a new system with which people will not be familiar. So it's a process that is going to be guided by the regulations itself and not the whole system overall. You must deal with that.
Question for the other witnesses. Given that the Commissioner of Official Languages is aware the Official Languages Act has been there for a while, there have been some violations in terms of signage that can be corrected easily. Don't you think that the penalties will only be imposed when the problem is not resolved? Do you still think that there shouldn't be any penalties? Inaudible. Microphone. Our position is that we can understand why we were not included because of the funding model that we fall under. But it's up to the Parliament to determine what the regulations will look like at the end of the day. But regardless of what happens, we'll continue to take steps to respect the Official Languages Act. The Commissioner has certain tools also, but we respect the will of the government and of Parliament to decide how this should be applied. And thank you. I have a motion. I'm going to introduce it now. So everyone received it. The interpreter did not receive the motion, but I will explain it. Given the recent speech by Mark Carney, where he talked about the Plains of Abraham marking the beginning of a collaboration between the English and the French rather than the beginning of assimilation, the speech was described as revisionist by many experts in the Francophone media. The Bloc is therefore proposing that we hold 2 meetings to invite historians where we would look at the facts about the Battle of the Plains of Abraham and the history of the assimilation of Francophones until today, up until today. Mr. Chair, saying that our country has been marked by this collaboration. That's revising history. That's not what happened. There was the British North American Act and many events in the 20th century. The Canadian and British governments used military repression, the banning of Francophone schools, and a series of other measures to assimilate Francophones and make sure that they remain a minority. Prime Minister Carney's speech is an attempt to make us forget the violence that occurred at the Plains of Abraham. The victims that made up 10% of the population of New France, the deporting of Acadians, the hanging of Louis Riel, and the repression of the Patriots, the Durham Report, the actions to assimilate Francophones, the North American Act, British North American Act that is still there and that stated that Francophones should not receive education. The underfunding of Francophone services that continues to this day, and the result is that according to Statistic Canada, the cumulative assimilation of Francophones in Canada is 70%. Only 2.1% of people in Canada outside of Quebec speak French as a main language at home. This figure was 4.3% in 1971, at the beginning of the Official Languages Act. In Quebec, we've reached a figure that's below 80%, and Statistics Canada predicts that we are going to hit a figure under 74% within the next 10 years. And so the effects of this revisionist history is striking. And it is this approach that allows the majority, the Anglophone Canadian majority, to close its eyes and ignore the right of reparation that is ignored. And it allows this assimilation to continue. There was a study here on the continuum in education. Francophone schools outside of Quebec told us, one after the other, they don't have enough money. They are given old, decrepit buildings. Anglophones are treated as second-class citizens in Quebec. The federal government continues overfunding Anglophone federal institutions, and that's why it's so important to understand our history and have a clear image of the current situation. To understand what's happening today, we have to know what happened in the past. Thank you, Mr. Beaulier. So for colleagues, procedural clarification, there's an open debate at this point, if you want one, on the motion that Mr. Beaulier just moved. Does anybody want to speak to the motion? Yes, Mr. Coudin. Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank my colleague from the Bloc to raise this topic here at the Official Languages Committee. I share many of his sentiments. I'd say it's very hard to really think that after a battle, there was a great collaboration, because when there's a battle, there's a winner and another party that loses. So saying that that led to wonderful collaboration just doesn't make sense. What the Prime Minister said, in my opinion, does not represent real history, but that's my opinion. I'm not a historian or an expert. I don't pretend to know everything, but it was a twisted interpretation of historical facts. He said this during his caucus meeting in Quebec City in the secondary residence of the Governor General on the Plains of Abraham. So to me, it was strange. It was kind of opportunistic, but I will let others be the judge of what happened. I'll stop here, but I'd like to hear what my colleagues from the party in power think. Thank you, Mr. Godin. Does anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Chair, I would ask that we suspend to discuss amongst ourselves. Okay, we'll suspend.
witnesses and for the people who are listening to us on on TV. Once there is a motion that is moved by a member, there's a debate that follows thereafter, and until the issue is resolved, we can't go back to the witnesses. During the suspension, I spoke to our colleagues. I consulted with them, and they want to continue with the debate. So very unfortunately, I'm going to apologize to our witnesses and free them. We had to interrupt you, but you can see that we at the Official Languages Committee are very interested in it. But sorry, Mr. Godin, something I want to say to the witnesses. Can you bring us what we need to make recommendations please express your concerns so that the government hears your concerns and reflects them in the report. That's an excellent suggestion, Mr. Gaudin. So I would ask the witnesses to please send in writing any concerns they have. So apologies to the witnesses on behalf of the committee. Colleagues, I'll go back to Mr. Beaulieu's motion here, and I'll give the floor to Mr. Gaudin. Thank you very much, Chair. We've worked hard together. We've negotiated with the other parties, and I have an amendment that I can bring forward to ensure that the main idea of my bloc colleagues' motion is considered. This is the amendment that I would move, that the motion be amended by replacing the overall Francophone media by a number of Francophone media. I'll come back to Mr. Beaulieu that pursuant to Standing Order 108 3F, in light of the recent speech by Prime Minister Mark Carney, in which he stated that the Plains of Abraham marked the place where Canada began to make its founding choice to accommodation over assimilation and the beginning of comma. And this speech was qualified as being revisionist by a large swath of Francophone majority in the media. I would replace it by the following, taking into consideration the history of Canada that minimizes, assimilates Francophones to the detriment of the French language in Quebec. That was A. B, reflecting the decline of French in Canada and government action with respect to Francophone communities. And C, reaffirms its protection to protect the beauty of the French language pursuant to the equal status between French and English. I'm reading it, but I think I forgot something.
Chair, can I give the floor to my colleagues because we did reach an agreement and we agreed on the last point, but I realize I've forgotten it. It's not on purpose. I think I gave you that piece of paper.
Non, c'est ça, c'est pas ça que je veux, c'est le texte de la motion.
Je pense que
C'est le texte de la motion.
Oui.
conformément à l'article 109.
Pursuant to Standing Order 109, I have it. So I would add D, that the committee report its conclusions to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee request a comprehensive response from the government. Is that correct? Yes. It wasn't on purpose. Mr. Gaudin has proposed an amendment to Mr. Beaulieu's motion. Is there a debate on the amendment? No debate. Then let's move to a vote. Is there unanimous consent? It's not unanimous. Okay, so clerk will move to a vote. Thank you, Chair. So we'll go to a vote on the motion as amended by Mr. Gaudin.
Oui. Oui. Il est supposé d'être là.
Les collègues, une clarification.
Colleagues, a clarification. I asked if there was unanimous consent to adopt the amendment. Is there unanimous consent for the amendment? I just want to make sure that you understand what I meant. I think I was misunderstood. I misspoke. My question was, is there unanimous consent to adopt the amendment? Is there unanimous consent for the amendment? Yes. Okay, so now we will vote on the motion as amended. The motion as amended. Is there any wish for a debate on the motion as amended? No? Then let's move to a vote. Is there unanimous consent? There's not unanimous consent. Thank you, Chair. So we are voting on the motion as amended. Mr. Deschênes-Thériault, no. Ms. Chenette, yes. Ms. Mingarelli, no. Mr. Villeneuve, yes. Mr. Godin, yes. Mr. Dalton, yes. Mr. Bélanger, yes. Mr. Gill, yes. And Mr. Beaulieu, yes. 7 yeas, 2 nays. All right, the motion is carried. Colleagues, it is 5:05. What I'll do now is suspend so that we can move to in camera and continue our work on the report. So we're suspending. you.